My name is Vanessa and I'm 24 years old. I'm in my second year at a local accounting firm, and I've got a story to tell you about my house. Well, technically my mother's house, or it was until she passed away from intestinal cancer 6 years ago and left it to me. Mom was always the planning type, especially being a lawyer specializing in real estate. Even before the cancer diagnosis, she meticulously ensured everything was legally sound. The house was hers free and clear. She'd purchased it before she even met my dad. My heart still aches with gratitude for her foresight. She made sure I understood every detail of the will, too. This way you'll always have a home and financial independence, she told me, her voice steady despite the pain I could see in her eyes. Things weren't always this complicated. My parents' marriage lasted 10 years before Trevor decided to leave us for another woman. I was 9 when he packed his bags. The sound of the zipper sealing shut a memory that still makes my stomach tighten. No dramatic showdowns, no custody battles, no property disputes. He simply walked away. The only thing he committed to was financing my college education. He established a designated account and transferred the entire sum for my future studies immediately. I suppose that was his interpretation of parental responsibility. Trevor started a new family almost immediately. His wife Elaine had their daughter shortly after. Madison is 13 now, 11 years younger than me. I'd visit occasionally, staying at their rented apartment, but it never felt genuine. Elaine would be preoccupied with my half-sister, exclaiming over her latest achievement or adjusting her perfectly styled hair for yet another Instagram post. Trevor was constantly at the office, claiming he needed to provide for his family. The irony stung. I wasn't really considered part of that category anymore. Vanessa, would you care to join us for dinner? Elaine would ask, her smile not quite reaching her eyes, making it clear she hoped I'd refuse. We maintained a polite facade though, exchanging birthday messages, holiday greetings, the occasional strained family dinner. It was all very proper and cordial in that uncomfortable way that makes your chest tighten with unspoken tension. Mom was a successful real estate attorney, so when cancer struck, she could focus entirely on treatment. I was 16 when we got the diagnosis, the doctor's words hitting me like physical blows. She reduced her caseload immediately to concentrate on fighting the disease. For 2 years, our lives revolved around hospital visits and treatment sessions. Mom never complained, not once. She just kept fighting, kept planning, kept making sure I would be legally and financially protected. But cancer doesn't respect legal documents or careful planning. I was 18 when she died, just weeks before I was supposed to leave for state college. The grief crushed me with its weight. I struggled to even get out of bed most days. That's when Trevor surprised me by actually stepping up. He, Elaine, and Madison moved in temporarily to help me cope with the loss. I was too overwhelmed by grief to question their motives, too desperate for any support I could get. "We'll help you through this difficult time," Trevor said, placing his arm awkwardly around my shoulders. Elaine nodded along, attempting to appear sympathetic, while Madison explored what was now legally my house, her fingers trailing over the furniture my mother had carefully selected. By August's end, I faced a practical dilemma. College was beginning in 3 weeks, and I wasn't sure what to do with Mom's house, my house now. The thought of selling it made my chest constrict with panic, but leaving it vacant for 4 years seemed financially irresponsible. That's when Trevor presented his proposal during breakfast one morning. "Vanessa," he said, pushing his coffee mug aside with calculated casualness, "I've been considering our situation. What if we stayed here? We'd cover all utilities and maintenance costs. You wouldn't need to worry about property management while focusing on your studies." I glanced at Elaine, who was preparing pancakes at the stove. She turned around with a practiced smile. "It would benefit everyone," she added, flipping a pancake with surprising skill. "Madison's already registered at the local school, and the house would be properly maintained. Plus, the neighborhood is so much nicer than our apartment complex." The arrangement seemed logical. During the 2 months they'd been staying with me, the situation had been unexpectedly manageable. Elaine had become less distant, and Madison had actually begun treating me like a genuine sister rather than an occasional visitor. So I agreed, ignoring the faint warning bells in my head. Looking back, it seemed like the perfect solution for them. I carefully packed Mom's personal belongings, including her precious law books and case files, keeping what I cherished and securing the rest in the attic. I meticulously labeled everything, feeling my throat tighten as I handled her favorite silk scarf. I left for college with a cautious optimism about my decision. Over the next 4 years, I came home during holidays and summer breaks. Those visits created an illusion of family harmony. Elaine would prepare elaborate welcome-home dinners, professionally plated as if for an Instagram post. "I made your favorite lasagna," she'd announce, though I couldn't remember ever telling her my preferences. Madison would pull me to her room to display her latest social media achievements or drama with her middle school friends. During Christmas breaks, we'd decorate the tree together, capturing every moment for Elaine's Instagram. Trevor would lift Madison to place the star atop the tree, while Elaine and I engaged in seemingly friendly debates about whether tinsel was tasteful or tacky. We'd gather with hot chocolate, and sometimes I could almost convince myself that this resembled a real family. Summer visits felt different, extended and less structured. Madison and I would spend afternoons at the community pool, where I'd help her with summer assignments while she complained about her teachers. Elaine would include me in her book club gatherings, and surprisingly, we'd enjoy analyzing whatever bestseller they'd selected that month. "Your sister's such a positive influence on Madison," I overheard Elaine telling Trevor one evening. "It's wonderful having her home. We should get a family photo for my Instagram tomorrow." Her words created a momentary warmth in my chest, making me wonder if we might actually be forming a genuine family connection. I maintained regular contact during semesters, weekly video calls with Trevor about my accounting courses, updates from Elaine about house maintenance. "The roses you planted are flourishing beautifully, Vanessa." I posted them and got so many likes. And FaceTime sessions with Madison, who kept me informed about her social media follower count and middle school dynamics. Everything appeared perfect on the surface. We'd established this unusual but seemingly functional family dynamic built upon the foundation of my mother's house. I never suspected it could disintegrate so rapidly. But I've learned about properties, regardless of how solid the foundation appears, you never truly know what structural issues might be hidden behind freshly painted walls. Finally, at 24, with 2 years of professional experience and a promotion on the horizon, I was ready to celebrate this milestone. I'd recently been informed of my advancement to junior financial analyst at Carson and Whitman Accounting, where I'd been working since graduation. The partners had called me personally to deliver the news, and my colleagues were planning a celebration. Everything was progressing perfectly, or so I believed. The Uber dropped me off in front of my house on a bright May afternoon. I paused momentarily, taking in the familiar yet subtly altered sight. Mom's carefully cultivated rose bushes were blooming, though they'd been pruned in an entirely different style than her meticulous approach. The lawn displayed precise edging, and new designer curtains hung in the windows, small modifications that had accumulated during my focused time building my career. Rolling my weekend bag up the front walkway, I reached for my keys with anticipation, already planning to relax in my childhood bedroom. But when I attempted to unlock the door, something was wrong. The key wouldn't engage. I tried again, thinking perhaps I was just distracted by thoughts of the promotion celebration, but no, the key definitely didn't match the lock. "What the hell?" I muttered, the frustration building in my chest as I tried the key once more before finally knocking firmly on the door, reasoning that someone should be home on a Saturday afternoon. Elaine opened the door, her eyes widening with unmistakable alarm. She wore an apron that looked brand new, with flour artfully dusted on her hands, as if she'd been staging a baking scene. "Vanessa. What a surprise. What brings you here?" I wheeled my suitcase inside, immediately noticing Trevor and Madison in the living room, both looking equally startled by my appearance. Madison was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through TikTok, while Trevor sat in his favorite armchair, Mom's antique reading chair, actually reviewing something on his tablet with intense concentration. What do you mean? This is my house, I said, my gaze sweeping across what appeared to be significant changes to the living room decor. Why were the locks changed without informing me? Trevor shifted uncomfortably, touching his neck, that nervous tick he's had for as long as I can remember. Oh, that. Yeah, I changed them last month as a security measure. There were some break-ins reported in the neighborhood. You should have told me, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady despite the rising tension in my chest. Or at least sent me new keys. This is legally my house. We weren't expecting you this weekend, Elaine stated carefully, her arms crossed defensively. She'd wiped the flour from her hands and was now visibly tense. I mentioned I'd be home to get some things before my promotion celebration next week. I told Trevor during our call on Monday. I glanced between them, an uncomfortable sensation building in my stomach. Something felt decidedly wrong about their reactions. Even Madison had set aside her phone and was watching the interaction unfold with an expression that seemed rehearsed. Vanessa, Trevor interrupted suddenly, standing up. Can we talk in the office for a minute? Privately. I followed him into Mom's old office, my office now, legally speaking. The room still displayed Mom's law degrees on the wall and her collection of legal reference books organized meticulously on the shelves. He closed the door behind us, and I noticed his hands trembling slightly as he turned to face me. Listen, Vanessa, he started, his voice barely audible. There's something you need to know. Elaine, well, she believes this house belongs to me. I stared at him, my mind struggling to process his words, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. I told her it was my house, he continued, avoiding my gaze. That I generously gave it to your mother and you after the divorce, and that after Olivia passed, it legally reverted to me. She thinks she's been living here because I'm the rightful owner. I must have stood there staring at Trevor, completely dumbfounded, for a full minute before finding my voice again. My first impulse was to storm out and confront Elaine with the truth. Now her surprised expression when I arrived made perfect sense. In her mind, I was nothing but an entitled intruder trying to claim space in their home. I need to tell her the truth immediately, I said, my heart pounding as I moved toward the door, but Trevor grabbed my arm. Please, Vanessa, he pleaded, his voice cracking. Just give me some time. I'll find us another place to live, I promise. I just need to figure out how to tell her without destroying our marriage. Destroying your marriage? I hissed, feeling the anger burning in my throat. What about what you're doing to me? He pulled a set of keys from his pocket, holding them out like a peace offering, his hand still shaking. These are for the new locks. Please, just a few weeks. That's all I'm asking. Let me handle this my way. I took the keys, feeling my stomach twist with disbelief and betrayal. Fine, I said finally, the word tasting bitter in my mouth. But this is completely insane, Trevor. You realize that, right? He nodded, visible relief washing over his face. Thank you, honey. I'll make this right, I promise. But the situation deteriorated immediately. At dinner that night, the atmosphere crackled with unspoken tension. Elaine kept shooting me these cold glances across the table, all her previous warmth evaporated. The woman who used to share recipes and invite me to social gatherings now treated me like an unwelcome stranger who had invaded their personal space. More potatoes, Dad? Madison asked, scrolling through her phone, seemingly oblivious to the tension hanging in the air. Would anyone object if I completely redecorated the living room? Elaine asked abruptly, deliberately avoiding my gaze. The current arrangement feels outdated. I'm thinking of a more modern aesthetic that would photograph better for my Instagram. I gripped my fork tighter, my knuckles whitening, knowing she was referring to Mom's carefully chosen furniture arrangement. Trevor coughed awkwardly and hastily changed the subject. The next morning, I was brewing coffee when Elaine cornered me in the kitchen. She was still wearing her silk robe, hair artfully tousled in what I recognized as deliberate casual chic, but her eyes were sharp and calculating. Vanessa, she said, leaning against the granite counter, we should discuss your future plans. My plans? Yes. When do you intend to search for your own place? She asked with forced casualness, as if inquiring about the weather forecast. Now that you're established in your career, you should start thinking about moving out. You're a professional woman now, after all. I took a deliberate sip of coffee, counting slowly to 10 in my head, feeling the heat from the mug warming my suddenly cold fingers. Actually, I've discussed this with Trevor. He's completely supportive of me staying here. Elaine's lips compressed into a tight line, and for a moment, I thought she might challenge this. Instead, she simply turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving me alone with my rapidly cooling coffee and a growing knot of anxiety about the inevitable confrontation ahead. The following 2 weeks felt like navigating a psychological war zone. Elaine's demeanor shifted from merely cold to deliberately hostile. She'd accidentally wash my work blouses with red items that would stain, claiming she confused the laundry baskets. She'd prepare family meals but coincidentally make just enough for 3 people, feigning surprise when I joined them at the table. When I tried to relax with a book in the living room, she'd suddenly need to vacuum that exact area. If I was preparing breakfast in the kitchen, she'd intrude and begin reorganizing the cabinets, muttering about how some people never learned basic tidiness. Most painfully, she relocated my mother's cherished crystal vase from its proper place on the mantel to an obscure corner shelf, insisting it clashed with her design concept. The most hurtful aspect was watching Madison mirror her mother's behavior. My half-sister, who just months ago had been texting me for advice about school presentations and social drama, now dramatically rolled her eyes whenever I entered a room. She started referring to me as that accountant girl when speaking to her friends on FaceTime, deliberately loud enough for me to overhear. Despite the mounting tension at home, my professional life was flourishing. I had established myself at Carson & Whitman Accounting, where my promotion would include a private office with a view of the financial district. My colleagues were genuinely supportive, especially Michael from the tax division, who insisted on taking me to lunch to discuss the promotion. When is the official announcement? He asked as we shared appetizers at the bistro near our office. Next Friday, I replied, feeling a rush of pride despite everything else. Just enough time to prepare for the transition and new responsibilities. That evening at dinner, I shared my career milestone with the family, desperately attempting to maintain some semblance of normalcy in our increasingly strained household. The partners are announcing my promotion next week. I'll be handling some major client accounts. Elaine's fork struck her plate with deliberate precision as she set it down, the sharp sound cutting through the silence. Well, isn't that just perfect timing, she said, her voice dripping with false enthusiasm. Once you receive your salary increase, you can finally start looking for your own place. I happen to know of several upscale apartments downtown, quite suitable for young professionals on the rise. I caught Trevor's desperate glance across the table, his eyes silently pleading with me to remain silent, to perpetuate his deception just a little longer. My stomach twisted with anger and disappointment as I stabbed at my food, choosing not to respond. To escape the suffocating atmosphere at home, I began reconnecting with former college friends who had also returned to the area. Alexandra and Emma both worked nearby, and we'd meet for coffee or happy hour drinks, slipping back into our comfortable friendship as if the years hadn't passed. But returning to the house always filled me with dread. I'd walk in and catch fragments of hushed conversations from the kitchen or living room that would cease abruptly when I appeared. Trevor and Elaine would jump apart like teenagers caught doing something forbidden. Papers, which I now suspected were mortgage applications, would be hurriedly stuffed into drawers, and artificial smiles would immediately appear on their faces. Saturday morning, I woke to prepare for the promotion celebration I was planning. The house was unusually quiet. No sound of Elaine's weekend food styling for her Instagram posts, no Madison's playlist blaring from her room, no Trevor watching business news on TV. The silence felt unnatural, creating a sense of foreboding in my chest. I moved downstairs in my pajamas, checking each room methodically. The kitchen gleamed immaculately, not merely tidy, but completely unused since the previous evening. The living room was vacant, the decorative throw pillows arranged with perfect symmetry. Madison's designer boots, normally scattered across the entryway, were absent. Even Trevor's car was missing from the driveway. I checked my phone, no messages, no notes explaining their whereabouts. Initially, I thought perhaps they'd gone for breakfast, but something felt deeply wrong. They never left without at least sending a quick text. Even during these strained weeks, they'd maintained that minimal consideration. I tried calling Trevor first, my fingers tapping nervously on the counter as I waited. His phone went straight to voicemail. Strange. I tried several more times with identical results, that robotic voice informing me the person I was attempting to reach was unavailable. A cold feeling of dread began spreading through my stomach. As I was setting up decorations for my promotion party, my phone chimed with a WhatsApp notification. It was from our family group chat, which had been silent for days. I opened it, and what I saw made my blood run cold. There was a message from Elaine, but it wasn't meant for me. It had been sent to the family group by mistake. Just checked in at the Maldives resort. First class all the way. Told the realtor we'll sign the papers when we get back. Vanessa has no idea we're planning to put the house in my name once Trevor convinces her to move out. The mortgage approval came through yesterday. Following that was a photo of them on a tropical beach, Madison posing with a fruity drink, and Trevor looking uncomfortable but smiling. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped my phone. I sank into one of the kitchen chairs, my mother's antique dining set, actually, my legs suddenly unable to support me. Before I could even process this, another message appeared, clearly meant for a different chat. Trevor, don't worry about Vanessa. After spending all that money on her education, she owes us. The house is practically ours already. I've spoken to the mortgage broker about changing the deed. Then Madison, can't wait till she moves out and I get the master bedroom. Daddy promised. And finally, Elaine again, oops, wrong chat. Vanessa? Are you there? I stared at the screen, my chest tightening with each breath. Within seconds, I was removed from the family group chat. My phone rang immediately. It was Elaine. I answered, still in shock. What do you want? Her voice was sharp, hostile in a way that confirmed everything I'd just read. In the background, I could hear waves and tropical music. I just saw the messages, I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. You're trying to steal my house? She laughed, a cold, calculating sound that sent chills down my spine. Oh please. It's not stealing when it rightfully belongs to Trevor anyway. You're nothing but an entitled freeloader living in our house like you own the place. Your father has tolerated it long enough, but I'm done pretending. Do you know how embarrassing it is having a grown woman squatting in what should be our family home? My entire body was trembling with a mixture of shock and fury. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. Elaine, this house legally belongs. Save it, she cut me off. I used to sell houses for a living. I know exactly what we're doing. Your father never actually cared about you. You were just an obligation, a financial drain. He already wasted enough money on your college education, and now you're occupying our property like some entitled princess. Well, I've had enough of the charade. Did you think you could just live there forever while we maintain and pay for everything? I could hear Madison laughing in the background and Trevor's muffled voice saying something indistinct. The betrayal cut through me like a physical wound. When we return, she continued, her voice dripping with contempt, I expect you gone. Do you understand? Pack your belongings and vacate our house. If you're still there when we return, I'll have you legally removed, and believe me, I have connections to make it happen quickly. I don't care where you go, live in some cheap apartment like other people your age. You're not our responsibility anymore. And don't waste your time trying to contact Trevor. He completely supports this decision. He's just too weak to tell you directly. We've already blocked your number from his phone. Enjoy your pathetic little promotion party, Vanessa. I couldn't care less about your insignificant achievements." The line went dead, leaving me alone with the devastating truth displayed on my phone screen. I sat at the kitchen table for what felt like hours, staring at the WhatsApp messages on my screen, my initial shock crystallizing into cold, focused anger. They were living in my house, the property my mother had worked for, had legally protected, had specifically left to me in her will, and they had the audacity to call me a freeloader while actively plotting to steal it from me. The irony burned in my chest. I'd had enough of enabling Trevor's lies. My hands had stopped shaking now, steadied by a resolute determination. I took a deep breath and dialed a number I'd kept in my contacts for years. Martin Friedman's office, answered a familiar voice. "Hi, this is Vanessa Mitchell." My mother was Olivia Mitchell. "I need to speak with Martin. It's urgent." 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from my mother's former law partner, the original copy of her will and property deed spread across his desk. "Legally, your position is rock solid," Martin assured me, his eyes kind but his tone professional. "Your mother was meticulous about this property transfer. The house is exclusively yours, with no contingencies or claims possible from your father." With Martin's guidance, I formulated a plan. First, I documented everything: screenshots of the WhatsApp messages, photos of the house's current condition, and copies of all maintenance receipts I'd kept over the years. I filed a formal notice of eviction with the proper legal authorities, giving them exactly the minimum time required by state law to vacate the premises. I returned home and methodically began reclaiming my space. I carefully packed their belongings, cataloging everything with photographs to prevent any claims of damage. Elaine's designer clothes, Madison's electronics and school materials, Trevor's golf equipment and business documents, everything was systematically boxed and labeled, then moved to the garage. I worked through the entire Saturday with single-minded purpose, driven by a mixture of disappointment and determination. By Sunday afternoon, I had completely removed their presence from my home. On Martin's recommendation, I contacted a bonded locksmith who specialized in legal property matters. He arrived promptly, replacing all the locks and providing me with proper documentation of the change. It was expensive, but the sense of security it provided was invaluable. When he finished, I handed him my company credit card, feeling a profound sense of reclaiming my mother's legacy as I held the new keys. Monday morning, I returned to Carson and Whitman, throwing myself into preparing for my upcoming promotion. For the next 2 weeks, I immersed myself in work, mastering new client portfolios, strengthening professional relationships, and trying not to dwell on the inevitable confrontation ahead. I kept their possessions secured in the garage, but I restored the house to reflect my mother's original vision, removing every trace of Elaine's design aesthetic and returning family photographs to their rightful places. Then came that Friday. I pulled into the driveway after my promotion celebration to find them standing there, Trevor looking visibly anxious, Elaine's face flushed with indignation, and Madison hanging back, scrolling through her phone with feigned disinterest. They had clearly just returned from their tropical getaway. Their designer luggage was still arranged beside their rental SUV. Elaine began shouting before I even stepped out of my car. "How dare you change our locks? How dare you lock us out of our own house?" I walked deliberately past them toward the door, my heart pounding but my exterior calm as I inserted the new key. Elaine followed, still yelling. "We're calling the police right now. This is criminal trespassing. This is our property." I turned to face them in the entryway, a folder of legal documents clutched in my hand. The tension that had been building inside me for weeks finally crystallized into perfect clarity. "No, Elaine, it's not your house." "It never was," I stated firmly, meeting her gaze directly. "This house legally belongs to me. My mother purchased it before she even met Trevor. She explicitly left it to me in her legally binding will. The only reason you've been living here is because I permitted it, temporarily." Elaine laughed, but it was a hollow sound, uncertainty flashing in her eyes. She turned to Trevor. "Tell her she's fabricating this. Tell her this house is rightfully ours." Trevor couldn't meet anyone's eyes. He just shrugged, his shoulders slumping in defeat. She's telling the truth. The house, it was always hers. Olivia made sure of it. I watched as reality dawned on her, as Elaine's expression transformed from fury to strategic calculation in mere seconds. Her entire demeanor shifted instantaneously, as if controlled by a switch. "Oh, Vanessa, darling," she said, forcing an uncomfortable laugh. "You didn't take those messages seriously, did you?" "I was just venting after a stressful work week. You know how I can get sometimes." All that sun and those tropical cocktails clouded my judgment. "Stop it," I said quietly, but she persisted. "We're family, remember? All those wonderful moments we shared, the social gatherings, the holiday celebrations. We can recapture that connection." She stepped toward me, arms extended as if to embrace me, her smile not reaching her eyes. Trevor intervened then, his voice cracking with emotion. "Honey, I'm truly sorry. I know I mishandled everything, but you're my daughter and I care about you. Please, can't we find a solution together?" I looked at him, truly saw him. The father who walked away when I was 9, who funded my education but remained absent from my life, who lied about my property, my inheritance, my mother's carefully preserved legacy. "What solution are you proposing, Trevor? A resolution for how you deceived your wife about ownership of my house, or an explanation for why you remained silent while she plotted to take it from me?" Elaine turned back with that practiced smile I now recognized all too well. "Vanessa, let's be practical. We can continue living here together harmoniously. We'll pay fair market rent." "No," I responded firmly, opening the folder to reveal the legal documents. "That's not possible. Your belongings are organized in the garage. Here's the formal eviction notice that gives you 30 days to find new accommodations, though I'd prefer you take your things now." That's when Elaine's carefully constructed facade shattered completely. "You ungrateful little, after everything we've sacrificed for you, you'd actually throw your own family onto the street?" I felt remarkably composed as I replied, "You just spent approximately $15,000 on a luxury vacation you deliberately concealed from me while plotting to take my house. I'm confident you can afford suitable housing." "Vanessa, please," Trevor attempted again, reaching for my arm. "I acknowledge I made serious mistakes, but—" "No," I interrupted him. "You didn't make mistakes. You deliberately lied for 4 years. You allowed your wife to believe she had ownership rights to my mother's property. You watched her attempt to redecorate it, rearrange it, systematically erase every trace of Mom. And when she schemed to force me out, you remained complicit." "I was planning to tell her the truth eventually," he protested weakly. "When exactly? After I had vacated? After she had successfully claimed my inheritance as her own?" I shook my head, feeling surprisingly strong. "I'm finished with this deception. Please gather your belongings and leave." I walked inside and closed the door firmly, ignoring Elaine's continued tirade about ingratitude and betrayal. Through the window, I observed them loading boxes from the garage into their rental vehicle. Elaine continued her verbal assault, her face contorted with anger. Madison was texting furiously, occasionally wiping away tears. Trevor simply looked defeated. It required 3 trips to remove everything. As they loaded the final items, Trevor attempted one last appeal, knocking gently. I remained seated in my mother's favorite reading chair, not answering. They finally departed as evening approached. The following day, Trevor attempted contact from an unfamiliar number. "Vanessa, please," he pleaded. "We can repair this relationship." "No, Trevor, that's not possible," I responded. "Elaine revealed exactly how you all truly perceive me, a freeloader, an obligation, someone you never genuinely cared for." Perhaps those were primarily her words, but your silence communicated volumes. That was 6 months ago. I continue to live in Mom's house, my house. I've refreshed the interior with new paint, restored the garden with roses that Mom would have loved, and truly made it my own again. Occasionally I think about them, wonder about their current circumstances, But primarily I reflect on Mom and how she ensured I would always have both financial security and a physical home, regardless of what happened. Trevor still attempts contact periodically from various numbers. I no longer respond. Some relationships, once fundamentally broken, should remain in the past. The surprising revelation is how much happier I am now. My career is thriving. I passed my financial planner certification last month. I've developed meaningful friendships with colleagues who appreciate me for who I am, and for the first time since Mom died, I feel genuinely at peace in this house. Sometimes emotional healing requires releasing your grip on toxic people, on convenient lies, on the idealized version of family you desperately wanted to believe could exist.